Chapter 21. Mike opened his eyes, and the first thing he saw was an orb of bright, bright light above his head. The light was too bright to be in Freddy's. Or was it? The next thing Mike noticed was that he was lying on metal. Metal! Not that chair again! Mike put his hands on the cold, flat surface and tried to push himself off of it. That was when he noticed the third thing. His whole body hurt. He levered up enough to look down at himself. He frowned at what he saw. Mike wasn't in the chair at Freddy's. He was lying on a stainless steel table. His shirt was gone, and his chest was wrapped in a swath of heavy bandages. Beyond his chest, Mike could see that his pants leg had been cut away from his left lower leg. The leg was wrapped up and bandaged too. He gritted his teeth and sat up. He swung his legs off the middle table.
Careful,
a woman's voice said. No, not just a woman. Vanessa. Mike tracked the direction of the voice, and he found Vanessa, sitting in a folding metal chair about 6 feet from him. The chair was tucked in the corner of a room filled with white metal and glass-fronted cabinets. Definitely not Freddy's. The room's walls were painted stark white, and the floor was a gleaming royal blue. Everything Mike saw looked fresh and sanitary.
I got the bleeding to stop, but you probably need stitches,
Vanessa said. Mike looked at his bandages again. Where are we?
Police supply outpost, an aid station. I brought you here from Freddy's. You were badly hurt.
A memory of the descending open mask flashed through Mike's head. They tried to kill me. Mike looked at Vanessa. She dropped her head, and her eyes got tucked into a pleated darkness cast by the cabinet next to her. But I'm guessing you already knew that, Mike said. Vanessa said nothing. Mike leaned forward. Max, her brother, and the other men. Did you know about them too? Vanessa lifted her head, and her eyes came out of the shadow. She looked at Mike, and he saw that her eyes were filled with tears. You did know, Mike said. He really hoped that she didn't.
It's complicated,
Vanessa said. Complicated? You mean more complicated than a bunch of possessed robots murdering innocent people?
Those people trashed Freddy's,
Vanessa shouted.
They weren't innocent.
Well, Abby is, Mike said. As Vanessa buried her face in her hands, Mike didn't bother to say that even vandals didn't deserve to have their faces gnawed off or their bodies chewed in half. Why, Max? Mike thought. Why had she been part of that? He shook his head. It didn't matter. Abby was the only thing that mattered. You watched her play with those things, Mike said to Vanessa's bowed head. His voice rose. You knew what they were capable of, and you didn't say anything. Mike shouted himself off the table. He took a weak step forward. He scanned the room. Where are my things? I need to go. Now! Vanessa dropped her hands. When she looked up at Mike, her face was striped by glistening tear tracks. Mike! Abby's in danger! Mike spotted his shirt lying on a stainless steel counter under a row of cabinets on the far side of the room. The shirt was bloody and it was torn, but it was a shirt. He limped toward it. Mike! He sobbed and turned toward Vanessa. Vanessa put up her hands.
Slow down. Take a breath.
She switched to her stern cop voice, and her face flipped from contrite to authoritarian.
Tell me what happened.
Mike suddenly couldn't move. The memory of his dream, of everything he'd done, came rushing back at him. It was his turn to drop his head. If only he could take it all back. It took superhuman effort to open his mouth and confess what he'd done. As he did, he couldn't face Vanessa. He talked to the floor. In my dream, Mike began. He took a breath and tried again. They wanted Abby, and I gave her to them. He pressed his palm against the side of his head. It was a terrible mistake. I'm gonna try to fix it. He pounded the heel of his hand against his temple. Mike looked at Vanessa. What do they want with my sister? Several long seconds passed. Mike thought Vanessa wasn't going to answer. And when she did, he wished she hadn't.
They want to make her like them,
Vanessa said. The pretty yellow taxi drove away. Abby waved to the driver, but he didn't wave back. He didn't even look at her. Abby shrugged. She gazed up at Golden Freddy, her friend. Golden Freddy held out his big furry hand. Abby grinned and took it. They swung their hands together as they walked toward the entrance to Freddy's. Golden Freddy's heavy steps crackle-thumped over the crumbly concrete sidewalk. Abby felt like she might burst. She was so excited. Golden Freddy pushed the metal door open. He let go of Abby's hand and motioned for her to go through in front of her. Such a gentleman. Abby skipped into the pizzeria's lobby. Behind her, the heavy door clanked shut. Abby turned back toward Golden Freddy and he was gone. Abby frowned. She turned in a full circle.
Where'd you go?
Abby looked at the door. Had he left? No, she'd have heard his footsteps. She turned toward the archway. She'd have heard his footsteps no matter which way he'd gone. Abby shrugged. She'd seen some of Golden Freddy's magic. He must have used that to disappear. Maybe he was with the others. Abby started across the lobby, heading toward the dining room. She couldn't wait to see Freddy, original Freddy, and the others. The scuff-tap of Abby's footsteps seemed to bounce off the dining room walls as she walked into the room. She looked toward the stages. The curtains were drawn back, but the stages were empty. Abby frowned and looked around.
Hello?
Most of the dining room was so dim that Abby could barely see it. Instead of the usual half-on, half-off fluorescent bulbs that lit the room, just one single floodlight came from the stage. It stretched out like a fat, yellow, ghostly finger, which pointed across the room at the wall of children's drawings.
Freddy?
Abby called.
Chica? Anyone?
Abby's calls circled around the room and returned to her. No one answered them. Looking at the light finger, Abby gazed toward the end of it. Why was it pointing at the drawings? Curious, Abby walked over to the wall. She looked up. Abby had noticed the drawings before. It was impossible to miss them. The curled, brittle papers covered nearly one wall of the dining room, and the air currents in the room were always tickling the drawings, which made them crackle. Abby had never really looked at the drawings before, though. Now she did. Drawn by kids younger than Abby, the pictures were mostly of stick figures, but it was possible to tell what the figures were supposed to be. Abby could see, in the images, kids playing, families eating, the animatronics performing. The pale circle of light at the end of the yellow ghost finger was centered in the middle of the drawings, and in the center of the circle, one drawing stood out. Abby stepped over to it. The drawing was of a yellow rabbit, which was holding hands with 5 smiling children. Even though they were clumsily drawn, Abby recognized the children. They were her friends. After she dropped her bomb, Vanessa had left her chair and started pacing back and forth by the cabinets. Mike, still stunned, could only watch her in silence. Vanessa stopped pacing. Standing with her back to Mike, she began to talk. Cop Vanessa was gone again. This was the gentler side of Vanessa, and she spoke so softly that he had the strain to hear her.
In the 80s, she began, when those children went missing, the police searched Freddy's from top to bottom. Every square inch was accounted for, but they never found them.
Something about Vanessa's voice or her words turned Mike's shame on its head. Anger swelled up from his bandaged chest. He clamped his teeth together and clenched his fists.
The man who took them, Vanessa went on, he's a very bad man. A cruel man.
Mike watched Vanessa reach into the pocket of her uniform pants. She took out a folded piece of paper.
He's also a very clever man, she said. He knew the parents would scream bloody murder and the police would come looking. And he knew there was one place the police would everything to check. Because, why would they?
Vanessa turned around to face Mike.
Why would anyone?
Mike's legs almost went out from under him as his mind replayed the gut-wrenching moment when he watched the animatronics open up in the torture chamber at the parts and service room. His memory flashed on Max's cleaved-in-half body, inside the animatronic. As if she was saying what Mike was envisioning in his head, Vanessa said, "It's not just the children's ghosts inside those robots." Mike's stomach heaved. He kept his mouth shut. "It's their bodies," Vanessa said. The yellow light finger disappeared. That made it seem like a dark shade had come down over the drawings. The shade came down over everything, for an instant. Then 4 new light fingers extended down from the ceiling. They pointed at an angle toward the 2 stages. Abby turned around, looking toward the stages. She clapped her hands. They were her friends.
Freddy and Bonnie and Chica stood at their microphones on the main stage. Fox was set up on his smaller stage. They were all ready to put on a show. Vanessa took a few steps toward Mike. The folded paper was compressed in her closed hand, held to her chest. The hand was visibly trembling. "You have to understand," Vanessa said. "The kids don't want to hurt anybody. It's him. He influences them. Somehow."
"Who?"
"It wasn't their fault." Vanessa's tone was pleading now. "They were scared and alone.
And they didn't know any better.
Vanessa held out her empty hand.
You have to believe me."
Why did Mike think that Vanessa wasn't talking just about the kids at Freddy's? He knew why. The urgency in Vanessa's tone was too intense. It sounded like she wasn't just trying to justify the behavior of some ghost kids. Her tone was too personal for that. It sounded like she was begging for absolution. Mike stepped forward and put his hands on Vanessa's shoulders. He could feel them quaking in his grasp. She scared out of her mind, Mike thought. Abby frowned at her friends. Why weren't they moving? The animatronics were frozen in place. They looked like sculptures. Abby's gaze shifted from one lit-up friend to the next. She took a step forward.
"Guys?"
They still didn't move. The Vanessa switch clicked again. The almost childlike "please forgive me" crimp between her brows disappeared. Her jaw took on the hardness Mike had seen so many times before. Vanessa shrugged out from under Mike's hands. She stepped back, and when she spoke again, her voice had an edge. "I tried to warn you." Mike gave Vanessa a "you've got to be kidding" look. She nodded once, emphatically. "In my way. I really did try. We were just too dense. Too single-minded," she shrugged. "It's too late now. He knows you're looking for him." The resolve wavered. Little girl Vanessa reappeared, hunching Vanessa's shoulders. "He'll be coming," she said in a hushed tone.
"Who is he?"
Mike asked. Vanessa pressed her lips together.
"Vanessa, please!"
Mike implored her.
"You have to tell me!"
Vanessa held out the folded paper she held in a vice grip. "He's my father," she said. Mike took the paper, his hands beginning to shake. He unfolded it. The paper was an old folded and refolded photograph. Mike gasped.
"No,"
he whispered. He stared so hard at the photograph that his eyes started to hurt, and the photograph began to blur. But it didn't matter. He'd seen it. He'd never unsee it. In the photo, a little girl with streaked blonde hair stood in front of a bright and shiny Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. A screaming yell of "Grand Opening!" banner fluttered from the eaves of the building. Beneath the banner, all 4 animatronics were crouched down on one knee, surrounding the little girl like they were all one big happy family. The girl grinned from ear to ear, and in her hand she held Garrett's orange toy airplane. He dropped the photo. He took a step back as if the photo was a firebomb that would incinerate him. Mike lifted his gaze to Vanessa. He had to clear his throat twice before he could get his vocal cords to work. When he could finally speak, his words sounded like they were rattling over a gravel road.
"You knew?"
Vanessa held out a hand. "Mike."
"My brother. This whole time. You knew."
Vanessa shook her head. "Not about Garrett. No, at least, not when I met you."
"But the others?"
Vanessa looked down. "I'm sorry, Mike. I'm so... The photo hadn't turned into a firestorm. But Mike's emotions did. All the shame, the confusion, the shock, they all fused together. They exploded into a ball of pure rage. Mike lunged forward and grabbed Vanessa by her uniform collar.
"Tell me how to stop them," he growled. "Tell me how to save my sister."
If ever Mike expected to see the cop side of Vanessa, it was now. But she didn't react with power. She shrank inward like a victim. Her eyes were so wide that they almost sealed her face. Abby took a stutter step back when the stage speakers crackled, and an assault of whiny feedback forced her to cover her ears. The multicolored performance lights sprang on, sweeping over the stage like whipping ribbons. Red ribbons, blue ribbons, yellow ribbons, orange ribbons, purple ribbons. Light ribbons went every which way. And finally, the animatronics came to life. They exploded to life. They all launched into the rock song that they were most famous for. Abby, relieved, clapped her hands and started dancing.